Thank you so much. That's such a wonderful song. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. I am no stranger to this church or this congregation, and it's just a pleasure to be here with you this morning. And I'm one of those ministers who never minds it if the crowd is a little light on a holiday weekend. You all are exactly the people that I wanted to come and preach for. So, thank you for showing up. I hope that this service will give you some hope and some courage, a couple of laughs, and leave you going into the rest of your holiday weekend feeling like this was exactly the right thing to do this morning. Let us read together our responsive reading. It's number 444 in the back of the hymnal. These are words by Kenneth Patton, and I will read the plain type if you will read the italicized. So let me hear you when it comes your time. This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature.
It is a house of friendships, haven in trouble, and open room for the encouragement of our sorrow.
It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person.
It offers a platform with a free voice, for declaring both minds, security, and union, the full and undivided content of the name.
It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quests, where mystics can abide in a community of searchers.
It is a house of art, adorning celebrations, melodies, and handiworks.
It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present in visions of growth and progress.
This house is the cradle of our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor.
Have you ever returned to a location from your youth only to be surprised by the discrepancy between reality and your memory? A couple of years ago, when I returned to the church of my childhood for my grandmother's funeral, I was surprised that the sanctuary was so small. I had not been there in many years. Still, I remembered it much larger. Of course, the church building had not changed. I had. I'd gone away, seen a part of the world, and had become an adult. Leaving family and home, I had embarked on my own life. Only by returning could I see the significance my memory gave to that place. As a child and a teenager, the sanctuary of my home church was a room that was large with meaning. Its high, dark wood ceiling with heavy beams, its Germanic stained glass windows installed 100 years ago, its rows of pews with red cushions, its pipe organ, pulpit, and communion table, its smell of candle wax and furniture polish. Through the passing of time, I remembered each of these qualities as more significant than they were. Their meaning was tied to the central place that church had in my family's life. 4 generations of Danas and Lymans over the years, always sitting in the same pew. My grandma Lyman was an institution in that little Protestant church in Deer Lodge, Montana. She had raised her children and her grandchildren there. For almost 50 years, she was the church's receiving treasurer. This meant that every Sunday, rather than greeting the minister at the rear door of the sanctuary at the end of the service, my grandmother would swim upstream and empty the offering plates into a bank bag. Later each Sunday afternoon, she would spread all of the money out on her dining room table, count it, record people's contributions, and prepare the church's Monday morning deposit. As a child, I liked to help her with this task because I got to count the coins and roll them in those little paper sleeves. I was quite sure that my grandmother was rich beyond comparison. Why else would they just let her take all that money home with her? A few Sundays a year, it would be my grandmother's turn to prepare communion. Before the service, I would go with her to the church's side room where we would cut slices of bread, soft, squishy, stick to the roof of your mouth Wonder Bread, into uniform cubes and fill dozens of little glasses with grape juice. Grandma would coach me. "Now, Howard, precision matters," she would say. "We can't have someone getting less of Jesus' Last Supper than the next." If I promised to be really careful, Grandma would let me put the grape juice in the little shot glasses, using a turkey baster, of course. On that beautiful October day, as I walked into the church of my childhood, these and many other memories flooded me. The memories of the myriad ways that church had supported my family brought me to tears. I thought about how the people of that congregation had seen me grow up. They had baptized me and confirmed me. They'd witnessed my first awkward sermon, delivered one hot summer Sunday after I had returned from some inspiring youth event. The ministers of that congregation had been there for me in my adolescence, when being a bookish, slightly effeminate boy made me the target for cruelty. That congregation's Sunday school teachers had patiently taught me not only Bible stories and songs, but more importantly, how to be a kind person. They taught me to love other people and to trust that God would help guide my life. They taught me the value of church and of community. It was their love that called me into deeper meaning and into ministry. I believe that we all long for this kind of community, this kind of connection. In her book, Traveling Mercies, Annie Lamott writes, "Most of the people I know who have what I want, which is to say, purpose, heart, balance, gratitude, and joy, are people with a deep sense of spirituality. They are people in community who pray or practice their faith. They are Buddhists, Jews, Christians, people banding together to work on themselves and for human rights. They follow a brighter light than the glimmer of their own candle. They are part of something beautiful." She continues, "I saw something once at the Jewish Theological Seminary that said, 'A human life is like a single letter of the alphabet. It can be meaningless, or it can be a part of a great meaning.'" For 12 years, I have served a community of the kind Lamott longs for, a people banding together to work on themselves and for human rights. Perhaps you have found the same here. This is a great congregation. I am no stranger to what you are doing. So what brings us together? What draws us to our Unitarian Universalist congregations? We too are people who seek purpose, heart, balance, gratitude, and joy. We are people who strive to have a deep sense of spirituality. I know that however imperfect a congregation is, and every congregation is imperfect, it is a people's best attempt at community. Be it a synagogue or a church, a mosque, a sangha, a temple, or a meeting house, the gathering of people in religious community is always a quest for greater meaning. And in this regard, we Unitarian Universalists are no different than our religious neighbors. We too desire to bring our best selves to this church, this workshop of our common endeavor, to quote Ken Patton. Our transcendentalist ancestors showed us that spirituality need not be confined to the walls of a church. We can find wonder in all creation, they insisted, and they were right. For many of us, it is when we are out in the natural world that we have some of our most transcendent experiences. When we seek out woods and ponds, we open ourselves to the insights that come from beauty and nature. But it would be a mistake to think that the occasional hike or a bird-watching trip could form the whole of a spiritual life. Necessary as they are, we cannot live on vistas, sunsets, and autumn leaves alone. Yes, God can be found everywhere, but our world is hurting. We have much to accomplish for our family, for the health of our communities, and for our planet. More so than ever, we humans must rise to the challenges of our time, band together, and work for the common good. There's a village in the hills of Oaxaca in southern Mexico that produces some of the most beautiful carpets in the world. The pueblo of Teotitlan stands as a model for cooperative living and working. For hundreds of years, the villagers of Teotitlan have been weaving communally. Some members of the village herd the sheep, some shear the fleece and card the wool, others spin the wool into yarn, still others dye the yarn using naturally occurring colors derived from plants, shells, minerals, and flowers. Yet others weave these individual colorful strands into intricate designs. The unique thing about the way the villagers of Teotitlan work is that everyone can do any of the jobs. All can tend the sheep. All know how to spin the yarn and dye it. Each can sit at the loom and turn the colorful strands into carpets. And all share collectively in the proceeds of the carpet sales. Each member of the village enters the workshop as an equal. Some may be more skilled in one area or another, but all understand the whole process of creating a carpet. The shepherd is held in as high esteem as the weaver. All are needed to sustain the village art. At its best, a congregation will function like the villagers of Teotitlan. At its best, a church is a place that fosters a spirit of community and congregational vitality. It draws in new members and invigorates the ones who are already there. It nurtures and develops new leaders. It works to heal divisions. It helps all be kinder and gentler to each other. Church should not be just one more thing to do, just one more obligation. It should be a place where we can develop the better part of ourselves. It should be a place where we are nurtured and where we nurture in turn. But to attain this level of cooperation, we must remember that churchmanship is an art. Ours is a workshop, not a factory. Have you seen the episode of I Love Lucy, where Lucy and Ethel have jobs in a candy factory? Those of you who know this comic scene already know where I'm going with it. In this episode, Lucille Ball, one of the premier comics of the 1950s, is working with her best friend Ethel on an assembly line in a chocolate factory. As a conveyor belt carries the chocolates one by one to the two women, their job is to wrap them and to send them on to be boxed. The boss sternly warns them, "If one piece of candy gets by you, you're fired." At first, things go well. Lucy and Ethel manage to wrap efficiently and even brag a little bit that this job isn't really that hard. Then the conveyor belt speeds up a little bit. To avoid missing a piece of candy, Ethel sticks it in her mouth. Lucy scoops a few pieces off the belt in front of her to keep up. As the belt brings more and more candy and the women get farther and farther behind, more and more chocolates go in their mouths. A worried Lucy remarks, "I think we are fighting a losing game here." When they hear the boss coming back to check on them, Lucy and Ethel panic. They try to hide the candy wherever they can, in their mouths, down their blouses, in their hats. They do manage to conceal the candy in time, much to the television audience's delight. The boss commends them, saying, "Fine, you're doing splendidly." Then she yells to the conveyor belt controller, "Speed it up a little." For our leaders, too often church feels just like this. Of course, the nature of congregational life is such that when we succeed, a new challenge presents itself. Successful, healthy congregations grow, and this necessitates change, learning, and innovation. Lucy and Ethel are working in a factory, not a cooperative. Neither is valued for their skills nor their ideas. Their job is to perform one task over and over, and to not get behind. Through our laughter, we also feel bad for Lucy and Ethel. Like them, we church leaders want to do a good job. We want to keep up. We want to take care of any little mistakes that happen. We want to cover up our errors. But the chocolates keep coming and coming and coming. Even sometimes at church we need to yell, "Slow down the belt." But rather than thinking to do this, we too often wind up covered in chocolate. Church is not a factory. It is a cooperative. This workshop of our common endeavor must operate differently than most day-to-day jobs. It requires something different of us, too. To quote Annie Lamott, it must allow us to be a part of a great meaning. Most Sundays, as I stand before the congregation that I have served for more than 12 years, I am keenly aware of the ways that our lives have become intertwined. As I stand at the pulpit and look out at the faces of the people that I know so well, I see there before me a community that yearns to be of use in the world. As I stand in the sanctuary, I can easily remember all the people that I have married in that space. I remember even more poignantly the many members who I loved, whose memorial services I led there. I see the children that I have dedicated, the people who were new to the church a decade ago sit before me, now its leaders. I serve this congregation as well as I know how, and its members join in that spirit of cooperation with me. We are not perfect. We have our ignoble moments. I have my critics. And I love deeply some of the people with whom I disagree most. The feeling that comes over me those Sunday mornings when we are gathered in worship is how much I care for the members of that congregation. I am there to challenge them to care for one another too. We are all like single letters of the alphabet. We can be part of a great meaning. Take a moment to look around this room. Really, look around. Think for a minute about what this room means to you. What do these people around you mean to you? Is it your first Sunday here? Or have you been coming to this place for many years? How might you be different here? How has this place and its people changed your life for the better? How might they in the future? What might this church ask of you that no other place in your life asks? What might it give you in return that no other place can? How might this church be the workshop where your gifts are needed? Life is not going to get simpler. It is not going to get easier. You will need this place, and it will need you too. When I returned to my home congregation, as I stood in that pulpit, the very first pulpit I ever preached from, I could see clearly how my own life had been formed in this workshop of common endeavor. As the light sifted through the stained glass window next to me, illuminating the angel I had pondered so many Sundays as a child, I knew that it was not this place in particular that had made me who I am. Rather, it was the nature of the gathering. It was what all the other people brought. This church, or any church, was not about who the minister was or wasn't. It was not about the size or the culture of the congregation. It was not about the formality or informality of the building. It was not about its particular gospel or creed. This gathering of people represented each person's best hope to be a part of a great meaning. In that moment, I understood again that all is connected, past and present, near and far, great and small. How lucky I was to look out at those dear people. How lucky they were to see me, one who had returned, even if only briefly. How lucky we were to remember a woman who, though far from perfect, had devoted a large part of her life to the common good. How very dear this workshop of our common endeavor, how precious this amazing life. We need one another. May you bring your best self to this workshop. May it help you to build the common good. So be it. Amen.